Welcome to Secrets from the Saddle podcast. I'm Sylvie Dow, your host, fellow cyclist, bike club founder, cycling coach, bike race junkie, just truly super passionate about cycling. My journey with cycling started 20 years ago when I opened a spin studio, started a women's race team, and founded a women's only cycling club called Cycle Fit Chicks. I'm super thrilled to reveal all aspects that make the world of cycling operate. I'm so excited to be able to bring you interesting people from around the world, pro cyclists, recreational cyclists, coaches, event organizers, bike shop owners, everything and everyone you need to know or ever wondered about when it comes to cycling. I know you'll enjoy this episode. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Secrets from the Saddle, All Things Cycling podcast with your host, Sylvie Dow. And I'm really excited to have this lady on our podcast. Her name is Jackie MacDonald. She's 90 years old. And she reached out to me to tell her story about women in sport. Now, the thing about Jackie, before we bring her out, is that she has been in competition of various sports since she was 15. So we are going to be talking about women in sport in the 40s and 50s, moving into when she started. Well, her sport was not cycling. However, she did migrate into cycling, and we're going to talk about that as well. But just super interested about her story as a woman in the sport back then. She also has a book. Jackie, hold up your book. She wrote a memoir of Ladies Don't Do That, a memoir of an Olympian, and you can find this in Amazon. So Jackie, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you. This is really exciting. You're probably my oldest guest.
I'm sure I am.
And you look fabulous, by the way.
I'm delighted to be with you.
I'm so excited. So let's get right into it. I know we're not going to dive all into the back in the 40s, but let's just start about, because, well, it's actually interesting because right now we're talking about women in the sport of cycling and equality and having the same pay as men. Let's just start about your experience when you were 15 and early 20s in competition, because you went to the Pan Am Games, you've been to the Commonwealth Games, and you were Olympian in 1956. So what was it back then?
Okay, right back. I guess there weren't many sports for girls. And when I got into high school, I thought, oh, great, we can play basketball, we can play volleyball. Isn't that great? But it didn't take me too long to realize two things, that the basketball and volleyball weren't the regular rules. Especially the basketball was girls' rules. 6 to a team, you could bounce the ball once, and you could go 2/3 of the way down the court. It was as though we poor, delicate little creatures couldn't run all the way or something like that.
Okay.
So anyway, the year, I guess I was in third year high school, I was 15, and a friend of mine, I always loved swimming, one of my favorite things. And a friend of mine was in a swim club, so she asked me to join. And she was also in a basketball team in the community. There was a very good women's basketball league in Toronto and district at that time. So I got into those two sports. Now, one of my coaches also coached diving. So both Lois, my friend, and I got him to teach us to do some diving. And that was my first medal with the Ontario Junior Diving Championship. So I never got anywhere very much with swimming, but I was a very good basketball player. And playing junior, I scored, I set a new record of 38 points in one game.
Wow. So how many women were actively pursuing sports back then?
Well, not very many, because let's go back to high school. There was a sort of philosophy of girls and women regarding sports. And a lot of this influence came from the United States. There was a very active group of American physical education teachers who wanted to make sports good, safe for girls, which is good. But they also had the idea that girls weren't suited either physiologically or psychologically for sports that were very competitive or very, well, I guess it took a great deal of effort. And this came into the high school, certainly in Toronto, and I think more in Ontario and Eastern Canada than out in Western Canada. For instance, the girls had more sports in Victoria. My husband's from Victoria, and he's amazed when I tell him about the high school in Toronto for girls. Anyway, I guess I discovered that the boys had far more sports. If they were competing in finals in football or maybe some in track and field, we had to go down and we were required to watch, cheer on our brave boys. And I didn't like sitting, watching. I wanted to be down there doing. So that was my high school experience. I kept on trying to be a swimmer, but not getting anywhere. And someone in high school, not one of the women phys ed teachers, a male teacher, knowing I was a good athlete, stopped me in the hall one day and said, "Jackie, have you ever thought of doing the shot put and discus?" I said, "Oh no, I'm a swimmer." So if I had started then, I would have had about another 4 years to try it, because it wasn't until I was 20 that I said, "Jackie, you're not getting anywhere in swimming. Let's try something else."
Yeah.
So I called Lloyd Percival, the only name I knew. He was very well known as a coach and track coach at that time. And he came out to see me. We had to meet in a public park, because most of the action in the running, jumping took place at Varsity Stadium, but there were no facilities for throwing, never were during the time that I was competing. So it came out to a public park, and I think he must have seen some potential in me, because
big shoulders.
Well,
big strapping back from
swimming. I think I looked maybe like an athlete. I don't know if he had read, I don't recall that he knew my name from the newspapers, because in basketball, our games were always reported. Anyway, that was 1953. And my first or second meet, I won the Canadian Championship. Now, the standards weren't very high. But the next year, 1954 British Empire and Commonwealth Games, I won a silver medal in the shot put. And that was the first day of the games. The last day I was to throw the discus, where I had a good chance, not of a first, but maybe a second or third. And I got myself into a whole lot of trouble, because something that is hard to explain to people nowadays is that in those years, amateurism ruled. The amateur rules had to be obeyed. And
what are amateur rules?
Well, that they can be very complex, but very simply that you do sports for the love of the sport. You don't get paid for it.
Oh, okay.
It's more complex than that. And it varies.
Well, that's pretty easy to understand.
Anyhow, you don't advertise.
Still kind of like that a bit.
Well, if you really look at the basis for it, it's classes where gentlemen who didn't have to work, didn't want to dirty themselves with workers, who might laborers and such. Anyhow, getting back to this, I was scratched from the discus on suspicion of professionalism, because
what?
Yes. Yes.
You were just that good?
Well,
don't bring her out here. She'll take first.
We were the athletes. The games were in Vancouver, and the city was just delighted with this, and we were invited to all sorts of things. Now, I had mentioned my coach, Lloyd Percival, and he had a radio broadcast on Saturday mornings. My husband used to listen to it, and so did an awful lot of other people. And it was one of his sponsors, a soft drink company. Even after all these years, I can't bear to mention the name of which one it is.
Wow.
They invited me and I think some other athletes, and we were on the team by then, and we had team uniforms on, and they took a picture of me. I guess I had a bottle of the stuff in my hand, and they asked if they could use it. Now, I was very naive. I mean, I was very new to sports, even though I was on an international team. And so they said, could we use this? And I thought, no, I'm not getting paid. I'm not saying that I drink this stuff. I guess that's okay. Well, it wasn't okay, because on the morning of that last day, 2 newspapers came out with this as an ad. And so I was about to become the world's first professional shot putter. So I missed that, and I had a good chance of a second medal. So the press went wild. Mike, I should say, my coach was very, very good. He had never wanted to be anything in life but a coach. And he studied he was self-taught, really, but he went to different countries and corresponded with people. Technically, he was way ahead of everybody else. He also had a rather abrasive personality. And when he did set up a track club, his runners, throwers, jumpers just were much better than the others. So there is jealousy, but there was a certain amount in his personality. Self-promotion was one of them. Anyway, thoroughly disliked by the rest of the whole track and field institution.
Yes.
And so this, about 3 days later, I was cleared. It was fine. But the press always, sports writers always supported him.
They never forget, right?
And so the press just went wild over this.
Yeah.
I have some of the articles in my scrapbooks.
Wow.
And, so that was a terrible disappointment, but I think they thought, the sports writers, and I agree, they were getting at Lloyd through me. It was stupid of me. I was, as I said, I was naive. I thought, well, as an amateur, I'm not getting paid. I'm not saying but that is something that you were surprised, and that's something that's very difficult to tell people about from your age and younger.
Well, yeah, I can see how, like, you might not think it's going to affect you, and like you have no idea what they're going to do with it, right? And then the repercussions of what that means.
Anyhow, about 3 days later, I was exonerated. If they had decided, yes, I was professional, I would never have been able to compete in almost any sport.
Really?
So that's...
Yeah, but where's the sport for the professional athletes? There's got to be a place for professional athletes.
Oh, yeah, sure. The guys who played baseball and the professional, the hockey players and basketball. Oh, yes. Oh, sure. But they were professionals and they couldn't compete in the Olympics up to a certain date. Right. And I found that date, I know this is one of the dates I note in my book. When professional athletes could compete and the amateur athletes. This sort of happened gradually. But it was very, very strong. It was ruled by a bunch of very, very wealthy white men. Anyhow,
still a lot of that now.
So anyway, that was sort of.
So that was kind of the end of it, right? Because then fast forward about 20 years.
It takes into the 70s and something, what is it, 12? The ruling in the United States that any institutions, educational institutions that received federal funds had to have equal money given to women and men.
Really? Back then?
No. I'm talking, I think it's the late 60s or into, I can't, at 90, my memory is going.
Well, that's okay.
I can't forget days. It's toward the end of the 70s, I think.
Mhm.
And this ruling meant that women in sports at universities had to have as much money as the men had. And this was a big thing in the States and in other countries too.
I wonder when that changed, because that's obviously
I could look up,
not
not
like
right
that
at the
now, I
moment,
don't think.
not right at the moment, but that made a huge change, and gradually this sort of all changed. But going back to the 19, I look backward too a bit, because I'd sort of had the idea, oh, things were really bad way back then in the early 1900s, and that they maybe had been getting better. Absolutely wrong, because you probably know something about the history of women in cycling.
Well, yeah, I'm getting to know more of it. Like when I started, one of my friends, Sam, you might know her, Sam Warscott. She's the two of us started going in and getting our coaching certifications, but she raced in the 80s, and she was one of the only women like
Mhm.
to be racing like
Yeah, I'm
regionals,
thinking, I'm talking
nationals.
going way back in
Yeah, I
the
know.
1800s, the 1890s,
Oh,
with the safety bicycle rather than just the high wheel bicycle. And there's a book about a racer from Quebec, a woman in the, I think, 1880s, racing in the high wheel bicycle in the States.
oh, really?
I'll send you a list of books. I mean, you probably don't
Oh,
have
you
time to
should.
read
And you
much,
know
but
what? We will add it to your profile. So anybody who's
okay,
listening
terrific.
can go and do their own reading and see what's out there. Because, Jackie mentioned, she has a book that she's like documented a lot of this, and she showed you it's ladies who don't do that,
Yeah.
and you can find that on Amazon. But it would be great to have others out there to have a read,
Well,
just to go
in the
back.
early 1900s, women were doing a lot in sports. In the 1920s, the 1928 Olympics in Holland, a group of 6 Canadian women were on the track and field team, and they outscored all the other women teams, and they were
Wow.
just big stars. And there was lots for quite a long time. The 1920s were called the golden years of women's sport in Canada, because there was so much, and it went downhill from then.
It went down.
And then, in
Wow.
my opinion, the 1940s and 50s were the nadir, the lowest point,
Really, eh?
because
Is that because it was after the Second World War? Or
partly it was during the war. Weren't as many sports for women and
well,
men.
yeah.
And some didn't continue after. And before the war, maybe into it, in Toronto, there had been a women's softball league, and
Hmm.
that were very popular. Now that this was outdoors, they had bleachers
Yeah.
and they played a lot and they were very popular. And I don't think that continued after the war. And some people, when I was competing in the 50s, told me who had been, one person in particular said in the 1930s, she said it was much better. We had more meets, we had more money to go places. And the coaching was, for me, was when now and then Lloyd could come out and see me in a public park. And the rest of
Hmm.
the time I had to practice by myself in a public
Hmm.
park. And then he quit coaching track and field. I think the problems that, especially when I was pulled out of the discus, that was traumatic for him as well as for me. So I never
Yeah.
had a coach after that. I did
Oh,
join a track club, but it was really a track club. And
yeah.
at least I was a member of a group.
Hmm. And you can continue practicing, no?
Oh, yeah, yes, by myself for the rest of the
Yeah.
time. There was never, unless you made a national team, although in the 1955 Pan Am Games, we had to pay our own way to get down to Mexico. And there wasn't any, now I'll tell an interesting story there. There was no shot put for women. I guess ladies didn't do that in Mexico. But when I was there, I went in to, I'd been doing weight training for a couple of years. I went in to find the weight training place and started doing a bit of a workout, and I caused a sensation. And then there's some reporters on hand, and he wrote up this marvelous article. And the chapter for that in my book is Lady Surprises. A lady surprises all the strong guys, because
Oh.
I'm apparently amazed all the male and only male weight lifters in the place where a lady wasn't to be, and she
Yeah.
was doing the same exercise as they were. So this was funny. He said, word spread like wildfire, and everybody came running to see this.
Oh. I
So
can't
that's
even
sort of
imagine
an
you be like,
attitude from there. It wasn't, and when I haven't just told you the story of how I got the title for my book.
oh,
Lloyd,
well,
when
I can imagine.
well, Lloyd wanted me to train with weights, and I said, fine. Called the Toronto YMCA and said, I want to train with weights. Could I do it there? And there was a pause. People answered the phone in those days. And she said, do you mean you want to lose weight? I said, no, I want to train with weights. Ladies don't do that. So that's where the title came from. And then I was advised to add something about the Olympics. So that memoir of the Olympian, that's where that came from. And I don't think I was criticized so much as people were surprised I was doing things. And then, of course, when I bought my Harley Davidson motorcycle when I was 20, well,
Oh my God, look at that. I love
look
it.
at the picture, there are three things that
Yes.
look at the picture,
Yeah.
three things that most ladies didn't do in Toronto in the 1950s. One was shot put, one was pumping iron, and another one was driving a Harley Davidson. So that's sort of what I was doing.
I love it.
I have some good stories about being stopped by the police. I kept getting stopped by the police all the time.
Really, eh?
Yes.
It's like, "What, Dad? Was that a woman?"
Well, I would go along, I stopped at a stoplight and didn't wear helmets in those years. And
Oh.
my hair was quite short. And, you know, if I'm wearing a jacket or something and I was tall, people would roll down the window and say, are you a girl or a boy?
Oh my gosh, really?
I'm giving you a bit of a flavor of life back in those years.
Yeah, oh my gosh. That is so cool. So after your 1956 Olympics, is that when you went
Mhm.
to university, or is that when
Well, I
you
had started, no, I finished high school. We had 5 years of high school and quite young. I was only 17. High school, I was very interested in, I liked math, I liked physics, and I even did
Oh,
some
good.
special classes with three boys. And
There's
before
another
school,
thing that
I
women
was
didn't do, right?
really
Get
keen.
right into
But then I thought that my math teacher was really great. He would sort of show us in his class where this might lead, that might lead, and you know, kids that were struggling with math wouldn't enjoy this. It got to me. So I went and I said to him, you know, I'm thinking I might like to study math at university. And he smiled and he said, I don't think girls should go to university. They're just going to get married. I
All
can
right,
see
well,
I'm
what
telling
university?
you these are experiences that I had back then.
Yeah. You're like, yeah, okay. So where should I go to university?
Anyway, I enrolled in honor science. And I don't know, it was just a bad year. I can't explain it. I didn't like anything that I was doing. I switched to phys ed, and then I tore a cartilage. I was only going to swim that year, really got serious, but I got dragged back or persuaded to go back to swimming or to basketball, tore a cartilage, and that put me out of the, doing anything for the rest of the year.
Uh-huh.
I got for the cartilage removed, and that brought on, in those days, there's no, what do they call it, the orthopedic.
No physio, no surgery.
Or something. They took the whole thing out and said, oh, it's okay, you won't need it. But, by 35, I was getting arthritic in one knee.
Yeah.
And my choice of sports sort of, that cycling, I could always cycle right up the time I had the first knee joint replacement. And the second knee joint replacement and a couple of other things too.
So is that when, did you end up getting married and having children?
Yes.
Yeah.
1958.
Some lucky guy.
Well, he's just come in, I think. I heard something. Lucky guy, are you there?
I'm just getting ready to go play tennis.
Oh, he's 88 and he's still playing tennis.
Oh, look at you. Good job.
Yes, that's Bill. Bill Gelling is his name. And
wow.
So he was in his last year of university at Toronto. He'd come from Victoria to go to university, and he was on the regular officers training plan and not supposed to get married while he was on it. But we decided that, we thought his parents were going to come out for his graduation. We got a letter from his mother. No, we're not. Now, we don't think you should get married until after Jackie comes back from the 1958 games. And he got very annoyed. So he said, well, let's just get married now. So I think we had to put it off a week or two. Was it 2 weeks? Something like that. And so we just got married, and we thought, well, it's a very small wedding. Nobody will know. But of course, it came out on the sports page with Mary's university man. However,
rule breaker. I love it.
Anyhow. Oh, yes. And then he was posted to Ottawa. So I finished my teaching year. I was teaching elementary school, and went to the 58 games where I got a bronze medal in the shot put.
Nice.
And came back, so moved to Ottawa, and life was just totally different. And I was doing different things in teaching phys ed, for one thing. And they had a whole room full of books, and someone had to create a library. And this was just right down my alley, because going way back much farther, I'm jumping around here. I hope
that's okay. This is good.
Things, I looked, when I tried to decide how to write this memoir, I decided that I should look at it as learning about myself and doing it analytically, and trying to sort of see if I can pick out people, places, things that, and experiences that had an influence on me over my life, and influence the things I chose to do and the person I have ended up being. And when I was 6 or 7, some friends were coming up the street with books in their arms. I said, where did you get the books? They said, oh, the library. What's that? Oh, it's a place you can get books. You have to take them back. Oh, I ran to my mother and said, Mommy, Doris and Barbara have books, and there's a library. Can we go there? Well, of course we could go there. And that little library just became terribly important in my life. And I've described it as falling in love with libraries and librarians. So when I got to Ottawa and found I had to organize a library, set up a library, that was marvelous. Anyhow, then we started, yes. By the end of that first year of teaching, I was 3 months pregnant and had a first child when, near the end of
59.
yeah, 1959. You're still here, are you?
I still want to go.
Well, I may need you for more information. Anyway, yes, so I had gone back and started doing university courses in the evening. And I had an exam coming up on the 19th of December. And on the Monday before I saw the doctor, I said, do you think the baby will come before? Maybe I don't have to study. He said, you'd better study. So anyway, I went, I wrote my exam. It was in one of these huge rooms with people from writing exams from all sorts of places. And wrote the exam, that was fine. And on Monday morning, I started feeling something happening. So he was born exactly the day predicted.
Oh, is he? You know what? I got out of a university exam because I was pregnant. I was put on bed rest.
Oh,
And I had a biology. Well, yeah, it was halfway through the semester, unfortunately. But then I had to go back and do it again. So I don't know, just getting it over with sounds way better than
Well,
like.
it didn't bother me, but a funny story. So 2 or 3 weeks later, I went to lunch with a friend who had just retired from the school I'd been in. And I told her about this, and she said, "You're the one." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I drove a couple of Carleton University students to Toronto, and they said, we had an exam, and there was a woman who was very pregnant. We were frightened she was going to have the baby right then." I said, "It didn't bother me in the least."
Yeah, right. Ooh, let's get this over with.
No,
We got
fine.
so it was some time. So you're in Ottawa, and then that's where you decided to get your bike and
Oh, well, years and years later.
yeah.
You probably got from what I said, we moved and we moved. We had a second child in 61. And then we were moving short times, moving here and there. Finally settled down in Ottawa. Yes. And it was my older son said, "Mom, why don't you get a bike? I see Mrs. So-and-so and Mrs. So-and-so on their bikes." And it was just at the time, I guess in the mid 70s or so, that cycling was having a rebirth and coming out from California, and the idea of a 10-speed bike. And so I went to the library, as I always did, and looked up and decided that, what I needed maybe was a 3-speed, so I got that. And not very long before, I think I changed the handlebars to down. I've been reading, saying, and it is a better position when you're driving. And I went out the first time. I heard about the Ottawa Bicycle Club. I thought, oh, that sounds interesting.
It's funny, that's like 50 years ago.
No, this was.
You said 76 when you started hearing about, when you heard about them and you got your bike.
No, not 76. What are they talking about now? 60, the end of the 60s. I have to stop and think. 67, into the 70s, a bit later than that, in the 70s. I think I was in cycling overall for about 40 years. Just gradually went down and down. But anyway, I went out. I got dropped before I got out of the city. So I thought, okay, I better start doing some more.
I think that still happens in that club. I kind of chuckled when you wrote that. I'm like, that sounds kind of familiar. I think they still happen. Happens to a lot of people.
I borrowed my son's bike, a 10-speed bike, and this time they were going farther. And I said, "Oh, look, I'm not going to go all the way," because I hadn't done any distance before. And they kept saying, "Oh, you're doing great. Come on, just." So they talked me all the way out to Fitzroy Harbor, 38 kilometers. Well, that was fine. There was a picnic, and people gave me something to eat and drink. And when I tried to come back, oh my God, my legs were dead. And a very nice young man pulled me back to Ottawa. I got in at 4 o'clock, having told my husband I'd be home about noon.
Now
expecting
that's a
guests.
bike group. That's a bike group ride right there.
But
I'm
expecting
gone.
guests at 6 o'clock. Anyhow, so then I decided I need a better me and a better bike. So I went out that fall and bought myself a 10-speed bicycle,
Ooh.
rode as much as I could, started riding with the club at the beginning of the next year. And I got up to doing the Rideau Lakes tour that year, which is
Hmm.
100 at that time, 167 kilometers, Ottawa
Yeah.
to Kingston and then back. So
Hmm.
from then on, I had the bike bug.
Yes. Yeah. So I know like the OBC was like the one of the probably the only club in town because when I started my women's cycling club in 2005, they were still predominantly the only
Mhm.
club in town. And I'm like, well, this town is big enough for more than one club, especially if it's only women. And funny enough, I got a lot of OBC women join my club.
Oh, yes, I can imagine. Well, the OBC, there weren't very many women at all when I first started.
Hmm.
I often rode with men, and I really, first time I'd really pushed myself aerobically, because the type of swimming training we had done before, it wasn't, well, it wasn't anything like it
Yeah,
when my
yeah,
son started swimming. And that's when I got back to
yeah.
swimming and master swimming.
Mm. Yeah, you know, cycling's a whole different ball game. So into that, so you got back into cycling, but then you moved to, you said you went back to Winnipeg. Oh, that's what we were saying. You moved
Oh,
back and
well,
forth and
I only rode 2 summers with them, and then Bill got posted to Winnipeg, where we spent 3 years.
okay, and
Yeah.
then you got back to Ottawa.
And
Now
back to Ottawa, yes.
let's talk about the World Masters games. Now that still happens, and I've been actually looking at that myself.
Hmm.
Um, you know, periodically every maybe once or twice every 2 years or something. And just like, oh yeah, that'd be kind of interesting to go out and try. Now let's share about your experience there as a woman. How many women were
Okay, well, that's interesting because,
participating?
well, I was back to master swimming, doing a lot of swimming at the same time, at riding with the bike club too. And I was planning to go and compete in swimming. And then
Hmm.
I did something to my elbow, so I switched to cycling. And this was a 50 to 54 age group. And I think there are about 10 people or so. There was myself, and the woman who was really the best of all was from Australia, but she had come from England and apparently had done some racing in England before she
Hmm.
went to Australia. So in the end, I was first, she was second in both the time trial and the road race. And in the criterium, I was first, but because she fell. So I don't really feel she would have beaten me if. So that's a story about. But in the women, I have no, in swimming, I bet there would be far more, because
Right.
swimming was considered a nice sport for girls, women, and
Uh,
there are far more. But I don't know, and I don't know how many in track and field.
you know, 85 is kind of the start when women participated in the Tour de France, like 84 to
Yes,
89.
was it
Um,
89?
yeah, it was 84, I think, to 89.
Mhm.
Um, around that time frame, I've interviewed a couple of ladies who participated,
Mhm.
and so yeah, so that date just rang a bell. And it's funny that you were in there at the World Masters
Mhm.
participating in time like in road cycling. So but now you're 90 and you've spent like you put together your memoir and you're I've mentioned that you're no longer cycling. How does that make
No.
you feel?
Well, when I see people, not just sort of casual cyclists, but people who are clipped in and so on, look like serious cyclists, there's a pang, but
Yeah, no kidding.
yeah,
Have
oh
you tried
yeah.
a trike? Like a three-wheeler?
Pardon?
Have you tried a three-wheeler like a trike
No,
because
that's
of the
not the same.
bounce?
That's not the
I know
same
it's not the
feeling.
same,
No,
but it's still
no,
a,
no, that just doesn't, that holds no. It's just not the same thing.
how about not a trike, but like, those recumbents?
Um, well, I suppose that could, yeah, but I don't know. I think, well, I tell you, one of the things that I got into, the last sport I finally took up when I was 61, turned 62, and the first competition was rowing
Oh,
with
okay.
the Ottawa Rowing Club.
Yeah.
And from that, I discovered, I got back to the gym and saw people doing funny things on the bikes in the gym. So I really made a point of, taking what I'd learned as a rower and doing a lot of research into this. And I have taught quite a few classes on using the rowing machines in the gym. And so if I were doing, I have a lot of health problems, physical problems, very little energy. And once I started writing my memoir, I dropped everything else. So I want to get back to doing at least a few things. The rowing machine is one of them because I'm sitting, I'm comfortable, and I like it. So I think that would be.
And some good strength training. You get back to lifting some weights.
Well, I loved weight training.
Mm-hmm.
I was always strong, I think, especially in the upper body for a woman.
Oh, it's
And
a swimming. It's all
well,
this
swimming
swimming.
maybe, but
No, you don't think so?
well, I haven't swum at all. We are living in an apartment right now. It's a big apartment complex. There's a swimming pool. It's about 13 meters long, which is reasonable. Both Bill and Bill got into swimming with me for a while. He got into cycling for a while, but he had a couple of nasty falls, and I
Ooh,
thought I don't want him cycling anymore. But he's
right.
into tennis for many, many years, so that's fine.
Yeah. Pickleball. Everybody's into pickleball.
I can't stand, I'm uncomfortable standing, being on my feet, being upright,
Oh, okay. For long
being a
periods.
walker. But even with a walker, I don't go very far. I'm, at 90, everything's just falling apart.
Oh, but don't accept that, Jackie. I can't believe you're accepting
I'm
that.
trying not to.
Can't
You're
believe you're
you're
accepting
right.
that after
You're
all of
absolutely
this.
right, Sylvie.
You have like pushed the envelope from the start. Like you cannot give up and accept that.
Well, okay. If
I don't believe that.
you order me not to give up, I'll
Don't
think
give up.
I need encouragement.
You are way too vibrant for your age to do that.
But among the other things that I got interested in and going back to elementary school was in home economics. We went to another school, was sewing. And the second year I
Oh,
did it,
sewing's fun.
I made a dirndl skirt, something I could wear. And
Oh.
it's just really, I persuaded my parents to give me a little Singer sewing machine for my 14th birthday. And I just took off. I sewed most of my own things and later got into quilting in a big way. Ended
Yeah.
up teaching quilting classes. So
Oh my
that was
God, cool.
another big interest over my lifetime. And something that I didn't like or wasn't interested in high school was French, the way it was taught. But later, as I got traveling and I could use a little bit of my high school French, that was sort of different. So, by the time I had to really choose what was my subject of concentration at Carleton University, I had was feeling differently. I had before the 1957 games in Moscow, I had a 6-month leave of absence to travel around Europe. And I hitchhiking around Italy. I got on the road in Italy with my thumb out thinking, oh my God, I'm standing here with my thumb out hitchhiking in a country where I don't know the language. So
that's scary.
Well, it turned out marvelously because people would be talking to me and I started picking out root words and I started understanding a lot. And this was a revelation to me compared to French classes in high school. So anyway, I came back sort of with that. And then we were living in close to Vanier in Ottawa.
Mhm.
And I started to become aware of the French language and culture. And I thought, well, no, I think, if I go back to math, I sort of lost that interest. And but if I improve my French, I'm going to be able to talk to more people and be more
Mhm.
interested. So I opted for French literature.
Oh, good. I
And
need to
then
get back into my French. I lost a lot of it through
your
COVID.
name is French.
I know. I thank my dad all the time. I've gotten jobs because of it. I
I'm
know,
sure.
but seriously, my French used to be way better before COVID. And
Yeah,
then
well, I'm sort of the same. I did a couple of on COVID, a couple
Mhm.
of different things. One was a French English thing. It's supposed to be half in French, half in English, but
Uh-huh.
there weren't enough francophones. So often we were speaking French with another anglophone. And another one, well, later on, I started on Spanish. So there was Spanish conversation Zoom. And I'd been in
Okay.
a couple of different Spanish conversation groups before. So that was all good. But when we
Yeah.
were in Montreal, I had previously done a program at Ottawa U, which gave me a specialist in teaching English as a second language and a B.Ed, which I didn't have because I'd gone to normal school before I started teaching. And I discovered linguistics
Mm.
as a topic, as a subject. And before we went to Montreal, I thought, well, I'd like to bring up my French a bit. I haven't been using it. So I enrolled in 2 courses in linguistics in French at Ottawa U. And
Oh, yeah,
I
Ottawa
would
used.
like to do the same thing when I got to Montreal. So I went up to Université de Montréal
Mm-hmm.
and to ask what courses might be. And a very nice lady said, well, come and sit down and talk to me. Tell me what you've done before. And I told her what I'd been doing. She said, why don't you do a master's degree? I said, what? At my age, I was late 50s. And my French isn't good enough. And she said, oh, your French sounds pretty good. And I thought, oh, well, I'm not that serious. It just sort of, and so anyway, she gave me all the material and I took it away. It took me many months and it sort of grew in my head. And I thought, why not?
Why
So
not?
I enrolled in a program for a master's in linguistics. And I
Oh
had to
my
do
God.
quite a few makeup courses before because I didn't have enough of those basic courses.
Yeah.
So it was a challenge. French, if they checked me for French, I guess because I had done a couple of French courses at Ottawa U or I've done a couple of linguistic courses in French at Ottawa U with good marks. They probably thought, oh, French is good. But
Yeah.
it was a struggle, a real struggle, but I finally did it.
Wow, how long did it take you?
Well, I guess I spent 2 years at the university. The first year, they wanted me to do 5 of the makeup courses. I did a 6th one because it was a course that interested me. And
Wow.
there were only 3. So that was the first year. The second year, there were only 3 courses, post-grad courses. And but I had to do decide what I was going to do it about, and I did.
Mhm.
It was a study of Anglophone students at the University of Montreal. Their background, how they had learned French, and they had to define themselves as an Anglophone.
Mhm.
And some of them were allophones, that is, the first language was maybe Italian or something else.
Right.
And what was their background? I expected I would get all sorts of people who had been in French immersion. There were some, but not very many. And the answers, why did you choose to do this in your second or maybe third language? Now, in a couple of cases, it was because what they wanted wasn't given at McGill,
Mm.
the Concordia. But in other cases, it was sort of the same as me. They wanted to see if, well, for me, I thought of all the immigrants I had taught and how
Yeah.
difficult it was for them, what they had to do to come to a different country. Well, Quebec may not be une province comme les autres, but it is not a foreign country.
Yes.
But, you know, if they had to learn the language and integrate and so on, and if they could do it, I wonder if I could do it.
Oh, well, that's without saying.
But it was difficult.
Yeah. So you mentioned, and we're going to close it up, but you mentioned that you were on a walker. Now, I just want to share with you, Jackie, and I'm going to send something to you after, but I am a huge advocate for the walking bikes. Have you ever heard of them? The A-Linker walking bikes?
Oh, going back practically a century or so before they put pedals on it, so you could use your feet with pedals.
Well, it's kind of like that. Yeah, I guess so. But so I've done a couple podcast episodes with ladies locally who have used them, do classes with them, and they're way better than walkers for you. But I'm just going to close up there for now because I'm going to share something. I'm going to share a couple links with you later. But I just want to say that it has been absolutely a pleasure. Don't forget, everybody, hold up your book again, Jackie there, to go on Amazon and check out her book, Ladies Don't Do That. You can get the soft copy. I think the Kindle version is there too.
Well, you can download and from
yes, free.
Yeah.
Reason.
Friesenpress.com.
Yeah, and I'll put that link in there as well. And so just to go back and have a read, and like we mentioned, that there's other books out there too that showcase women in sport, and sounds like they were doing quite well until it took a nosedive at some point in history. Like you said, I think it was in the 50s that things changed.
It was the 30s. It was going down from the 20s. The 20s.
Oh, okay, there we go.
The 20s used to be called, a long time ago, used to be called the golden age of sport for women in Canada.
Oh, we need to bring that back. But I want to thank you so much for reaching out and being a guest on the podcast. So I hope everybody took some really good information away and you enjoyed this episode. And don't forget to follow us. And Jackie, is there somewhere where people can follow you? Are you on Facebook or Instagram?
Well, Facebook. I'll tell you, Facebook. I signed into Twitter ages ago, but I've never used it. I should start. I mean to start using it, but at the moment, just Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook, and
I have two profiles on. One is just me, and I rarely post.
And then the one about your book, right?
And there's one about the book, and I'm not doing much right now because, as I say, I'm working on the second edition, which will be.
Oh, that's going to be exciting. So, and also to, sorry, go ahead.
Also to.
Oh, is this, and also to follow the podcast on YouTube and Instagram.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, when will it be on YouTube?
It will be shortly, in a couple weeks. So make sure everybody tunes in there. And thank you so much. And have an amazing day to everyone. Thanks a lot, Jackie. It was a pleasure.
It's been a delight speaking to you, Sylvie, and knowing you a bit.
Thank you so much for spending this time with me on the Secrets from the Saddle podcast, learning more about sighting people, places, and things that make cycling such an exciting sport. I am so glad you stopped by today. Please leave me a review if you feel so moved to do so. I would love to hear your feedback. And if you could take 1 second to share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it, I would be forever grateful. Also, if you could please leave me a review if you feel so moved by going to iTunes and leaving me an honest thought and an honest comment, telling me what you think, and most importantly, tell me what you'd like to hear more of. It would really help me to bring more great, inspiring cycling stories to you. Until then, have an amazing day, make sure you ride your bike, and don't forget to visit my YouTube channel if you'd like to see the full version of this podcast live.